Your father builds empires and reads you bedtime stories. Then the world comes to collect. This is what happens to the son left behind. In 1977, Juan Pablo Escobar is born into a world of wealth most people can't imagine. His playground is Hacienda Nápoles, a private estate stretching across 3,000 acres of Colombian jungle. Hippos wade through artificial lakes that his father built just for the family's weekend amusement. A private zoo holds jaguars, elephants, and exotic birds imported from 4 different continents. The boy races go-karts on private tracks while servants prepare lavish feasts in kitchens bigger than houses. His father arrives by helicopter at sunset, always surrounded by quiet men in expensive dark suits. To a 7-year-old with no frame of reference, all of this feels perfectly normal. But fairy tales always hide a dark chapter that nobody reads out loud.
Good evening.
By the time Juan Pablo turns 7, his father controls 80% of the world's cocaine supply. The boy doesn't understand what those words mean or why adults whisper them so carefully. He only knows that grown men lower their eyes and step aside when his father enters any room. His mother, Maria Victoria, fills the house with piano lessons, private tutors, and long bedtime stories. She builds a wall of normalcy around her children, but the cracks show through every night. The phone rings at 2 in the morning and the voices on the other end sound desperate. Men arrive at the back door carrying leather briefcases and leave just minutes later without a word. Sometimes his father vanishes for weeks at a time, leaving nothing behind except his cologne on the pillows. Pablo Escobar isn't just wealthy. Forbes magazine ranks him the 7th richest man on earth. He offers to pay Colombia's entire $12 billion national debt in exchange for legal immunity. Politicians line up to shake his hand and take his money, then denounce him when cameras roll. He builds entire neighborhoods for the poor, and thousands worship him like a saint in the streets. Juan Pablo watches it all from the back seat of an armored car with windows painted black. His father is 2 people at once, the gentleman reading bedtime stories and the man everyone fears. That contradiction doesn't make any sense to a child who still sleeps with a stuffed animal. But that contradiction is about to rip their entire world in half. One morning, Juan Pablo wakes to the sharp sound of glass shattering somewhere below his bedroom window. The walls shake and the framed photos rattle off the dresser from a distant blast. His mother grabs him by the arm and pulls him under a heavy oak dining table, whispering, "Be quiet." The Colombian government has officially declared war on his father, and every safe house is now a target. Headlines about car bombs fill every single newspaper across the city of Medellín for months. Juan Pablo starts sleeping in a different room every night, never knowing which door actually leads to safety. His father builds hidden escape passages behind the walls of every single house they move into. The boy who once raced go-karts in sunshine now watches the world through thick glass he can never open. The Escobar family packs up and moves 23 times in a single terrifying year. Each new house feels less like a home and more like a cage with fresh paint on the walls. Pablo teaches his young son how to sweep every room for hidden microphones inside the light fixtures. The boy becomes an expert at folding his entire life into a single suitcase in under 5 minutes flat. At school, Juan Pablo uses a fake name and invents cheerful stories about a father who sells real estate. His classmates never figure out why a stern man in dark sunglasses waits outside the schoolyard gate every afternoon. Pablo tries to make it all feel normal, kicking a soccer ball with his son in abandoned parking lots. But normal disappeared from their lives the day Juan Pablo learned to check ceilings for listening devices. On a quiet Thursday afternoon in December 1993, the telephone in the kitchen stops ringing for the first time. Pablo Escobar has been running and hiding from the authorities for 16 impossible months across Colombia. Colombian special forces have finally tracked him to a modest two-story house in the Los Olivos neighborhood of Medellín. Juan Pablo is 15 years old when someone picks up the phone and says the words that end his childhood. His mother slides down the white kitchen wall and her body stops moving against the cold tile floor. His little sister screams in a voice so broken it doesn't sound like a child's voice anymore. The boy stands completely frozen in the center of the room, staring at the receiver hanging from his hand. His father, the man who built empires and still read him bedtime stories, is gone forever. Within hours of Pablo's death, handwritten threats start sliding under the apartment door one after another. Every rival cartel, every grieving family, and every opportunist wants the Escobars to pay for crimes they didn't commit. The Colombian government offers absolutely zero protection to the widow and children of a dead fugitive. They book a desperate flight to Mozambique, but the plane is ordered to turn back before it leaves the runway. Germany reviews their case and refuses them entry at the border within 24 hours. South Africa takes one look at the name Escobar and slams the door shut without a hearing. The United Kingdom won't even process the paperwork before sending them away with armed escorts to the terminal. 17 countries in total reject Pablo Escobar's widow and 2 children, making them the most unwanted refugees on Earth. Argentina finally opens its doors in 1994, and the exhausted family arrives carrying forged documents and freshly invented names. Juan Pablo Escobar signs a piece of paper and becomes Sebastian Marroquin overnight, erasing his entire identity. They rent a cramped apartment in Buenos Aires that could fit entirely inside the old hacienda's guest bathroom. After a childhood of gold-plated faucets and helicopter arrivals, the new apartment has one tiny bathroom and no view. Sebastian enrolls in architecture school carrying a backpack instead of a bodyguard for the very first time. He strolls to class through Buenos Aires streets where absolutely nobody recognizes his face or knows his real name. He eats cheap meals in university cafeterias and studies alone in public libraries until well past midnight. For the first time in his life, he's building something entirely his own, not inheriting something stained by violence. In 2009, Sebastian Marroquin picks up a phone and does something absolutely no one believed was possible. He reaches out directly to the families of men whose lives his father destroyed decades earlier. He sits in a bare room across from the son of a man Pablo had taken from this world. The room falls completely silent for a full, agonizing minute before either man can bring himself to speak. Sebastian doesn't beg for forgiveness because he knows that forgiveness isn't something he has any right to request. Instead, he offers something his father never once did: real accountability and the simple words, "I'm sorry." The 2 men slowly reach across the wooden table between them and shake hands firmly. It doesn't erase decades of grief, but it cracks open a door that everyone in Colombia believed was sealed forever. Today, Sebastian Marroquin stands at podiums in lecture halls stretching from Bogota to Berlin to Buenos Aires. He tells rooms full of young people that violence only ever breeds more violence in an endless cycle. He doesn't hide from his father's brutal legacy. He confronts it openly on stages, in books, and in films. His architecture practice thrives in Buenos Aires, living proof that identity isn't inherited, but built with your own hands. His own young son carries a family name that's free of bloodshed for the first time in generations. That's the real victory of Sebastian's life, not escaping the past, but making sure it never repeats. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, share it with someone